So we decided we should wear our wings this evening, to celebrate the gradual dissolving into the handmaid's fucking tale. David's in his appropriate red. I'm Lucas, and I just wore a very important shirt instead. And I also kind of feel shitty because I've been under the weather for a day or two. But luckily, David's been in a legal fever of masturbatory reading of this leaked opinion, and we will be taking that on as our big topic of the evening. But first,
so many pages of notes.
Good to see you. If you're here, say hi. John's here. Hey, John, how's it going, man? Brian is also here. Good to see you, buddy. I'm Lucas. This is David. David, how are you, man?
I am slightly calmer. I imagine that's going to decrease the more I talk about this fucking decision, and the more I drink, because I was like my comment to you earlier when I was doing reading this decision line by line, so I could get a handle on where Alito was coming from. As you saw, my comment to you was, I want to smash my computer because it has displayed such filth.
Scott's here. Hey, Scott. I don't know if I'm allowed to say Scott. You need to tell us if we're not allowed to say Scott. We won't fix it. We'll fix it next time. Rob's here. Hey, Rob. Good to see you. Well, it's appropriate. It's appropriate. Apparently, in this country, it has to be a sausage fest if you're going to talk about women's rights. So we've got that covered. We got all the dudes. By the way, all the dudes gathered around.
I apologize to anyone who's triggered by I normally have my PG-13 mode of
please
my tobacco. We're doing R-rated today because I'm that angry. I've been chain smoking since 2 o'clock. Yeah, I've definitely been this is my second pack of the day. I'm
gonna do my best not to cough all over the mic or snotty sneeze all over it either. But
it's okay. I'll do my best not to spread cancer through my microphone.
So before we do that, of course, and we are going to just focus on the one big topic. We're not going to do the pet topic, big topic. We got too much to talk about this evening, but we will do a quick little rundown on a couple of hot takes. Couple little quickies. My quickie, just an update on the Grand Rapids shit show. So, news came out today. And we posted this on the page. The Kent County prosecutor here that was supposed to be relied upon to prosecute, cops that fuck up, just decided not to prosecute a sheriff here who apparently some time ago was working the scene of a single car accident involving a pole, and the utility pole crackled and snapped and fell. And he mistook this for gunfire and opened fire on the person who had crashed their car, and they were sitting on the side of the road. Now, when the pole fell, that person jumped up and ran away from, the falling fucking utility pole, which is already a problem because if you're actually doing your job as a public safety personnel, you wouldn't have anybody sitting anywhere close to anything that could possibly be a problem. So then they decided that must be gunfire, and they took some pot shots, didn't hit this person. And they somehow,
I am Jack's complete lack of surprise.
Right. Yeah. They're not being prosecuted, but we're supposed to depend on this fucking GQP puppet fuck to prosecute Chris. Sure.
Hey, Lucas should be proud of me. We had elections today, and so, I mean, obviously, most of the judicial elections were, only one candidate, one of which happened to be a classmate of mine from law school. So I was very happy to see Marcus Floyd will be a judge here in Davidson County.
That's cool.
His wife is absolutely fantastic. They are fantastic people. He will make an excellent judge. But for Darren Hall, the sheriff of Davidson County, I put my right in. I literally just wrote anyone else.
Was that uncontested as well?
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Darren Hall has been the sheriff. I asked Mom, I'm like, Mom, do you remember another sheriff other than Darren Hall? And she's like, no.
Neither do I.
She's like, he might have been the sheriff when I first started voting, and I'm 80 years old. I just have this image of them wheeling in the crypt keeper into the sheriff's office on a daily basis, being like, oh,
Right.
still won.
Scott points out he's the non-leftist in the group. Actually, that's not 100% true. We have an interesting spread of folks, including a good deal of recovered Republicans, some definite centrists that lurk. And speaking of, Brian points out, we must remember that cops are people who thought getting shot at was a good job choice, and it represents the better of their choices. That is a fair point. Of course, don't you know, Brian, we're supposed to automatically regard them as completely selfless heroes, and nothing they could ever do would be wrong. Hashtag 9/11 nationalism.
I am Jack's very angry, sarcastic face.
Yeah. So, and let's see what else we got over here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. There's apparently one of the suspiciously not brutal enough people of color that's a commissioner. That's my kind way of talking about the call coming from inside the House, if you catch my drift. Apparently has made some news for pushing for some police reform. Now, I will say this, they did talk about a new budget, and they are taking away some money from the police budget to put into other programs. So they're listening ever so slightly, but it's like $130K. So, I mean, it's not a lot. It's a start, but it's not a lot. That's kind of like the participatory budget program being a $2 million budget, which sounds like a lot to people in the hood that don't deal with budgets.
No.
But $2 million is nothing. So
no,
we still need cities to play with real numbers that actually matter, but that's where that's at. It is election day throughout various places, as David mentioned. There's some here that are local to me, but none that cover my specific area, which is good because somebody's still driving around with a Tennessee driver's license. It's going to be fixed soon, very, very soon.
It's all right. Mine still has a 6-year-old address on it.
Yeah, but I mean, if you changed it on the record, isn't that what really matters?
Yeah, I mean, it has my right address on my voter ID card. I was a little afraid though, given how the state has. I showed up at the wrong polling place today. I went to my traditional polling place. And found out, no, we moved it. At which point, I went on a grand search down Bumblefuck Lane.
It's what you get for waiting for election day and not voting early.
Yeah, well, I mean, so to be honest, I have a big chip on my shoulder about voting for judges in the first place.
Right, we know.
I have an entire shtick about no, we should not be. Most of you should not be. Voting for a judge. It's not. No, you shouldn't be doing that. The bar should. Personally, in my opinion, we there's a whole slew of judicial reforms that we need to do, but one of the easy ones, or I think one of the easier ones, would be saying, no, the bar will hold an election amongst itself and appoint judges. There we go.
An interesting idea. Well,
because the people who are actually lawyers should,
speaking of judges, good David, at it. It's going to be time to jump in. But first, we got to tackle the other big subject, which is what you drinking.
All right.
So who goes first?
I will.
First, I talk first. You talk first.
I will go first. I have this Southern Grist Hirondella Crisp Pilsner, and well, it's Pilsnery. I mean, it's better than Bud.
That's not saying a lot.
It's a Pilsner.
Fair.
I am not a big fan of Pilsners. I find most Pilsners are underwhelming, except for Pilsner Urquell from the Czech Republic, which literally you crack one of those open in a closed space and everyone wants to leave right then. Unless you really, really just enjoy the smell of your own ass. Now,
this is apparently got a little bit of a crossover with, according to the description, Asheville, North Carolina. Riverbend malts Hirondella 6-row barley.
Yeah, they made this whole big deal about like having special ingredients. It's still a pilsner.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, if you wanted, here's the thing: if you want to showcase your malts and your barleys and your other things, make an ale.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make an ale.
Fair.
Don't make a pilsner, because I mean, the best I can say about this. I mean, it's got that little pilsner skunk bite at the end.
Yeah.
And it's got a little bit of a honey aftertaste. I'll tell you that. But I mean, the act of drinking it is like slightly wheat flavored water.
Fair enough. Now, don't you have like back in the days of going to mafiosos on Sunday nights with you? You swore by Mama's Little Yellow Pills.
Yeah, because
you're not a total anti-pills guy.
No, I mean, I'm not. Like, you can do good pilsners. The problem is that you have to punch it up somehow. Like Oscar Blues, Mama's Little Yellow Pills, it was fantastic because what they did was they punched it up with a lot of hop, and so and it was still a pilsner, but it would give you a hop note that was really nice on the front end, and again, still give you a little bit of skunk note towards the end of the flavor, the end of the sip. But I mean, so many pilsners just fall down for being just blah. There's nothing. No, I mean, there's nothing to speak of with so many of them. There's so much more that can be done with the style. I feel like just most people back off. They
only go so far.
Well, no, because I mean, when people think of a pilsner, they think of something really like super light and super drinkable. They like people are thinking of baseball stadium beer, like right. Of like, I want something that I can drink, 10 cups of, and not really taste any sort of flavor.
Yeah, you're right. That's true. Well, speaking of taste, as I'm under the weather, I'm taking it easy, and I'm drinking just one cider pint tonight to try to make sure I've got a real full day tomorrow. So I'm trying to make sure that I can at least fake it. And then Thursday is Doctor Strange, so ain't nothing else in the world important other than that. So I am doing the Vandermill totally roasted barrel-aged cider. That's this guy. Vandermill is another local to the area. In fact, you look up where that's at. Right here in Grand Rapids. Okay, cool. So, it caught my eye at first because it was Vander with a V and gold and black, and I was like, "Wait, what?" Wait, what? And I knew about Vander,
the Commodore.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, hold on. What the traditional Vanderbilt cry? I'm wasted.
Right. So, we all know I'm a fan of ciders. I thought that this would be a great bet. So they describe this as beginning with their traditional hard apple cider, then they steep candied pecans. Make our own cinnamon roasted pecans that bring vanilla, cinnamon, nuttiness to this product. Totally roasted, semi-sweet with a tart finish. Now, that is an accurate description. The problem I have with this is it says barrel aged right here. And for those that have not caught on, you could bottle toilet water, and if it was barrel aged, I'd pay money for it.
Yep.
If you had barrel aged and an apple on a label, not just cider, but like an Apple computer label, I would be there with bells on. So it's a surefire way to sell Lucas some booze. And I have to say that this is barrel aged in the same way that LaCroix is flavored. Like it passed through the air that escaped from a barrel. It is not a very weighty, bourbony barrel-y taste. And I was really hoping for a lot deeper. It's very, very light in flavor. I don't dislike it. It's just not what I bought it thinking I would do. I thought it would be a cider that you would save for a semi-chilly night by the fire, not drink it while you cut the grass. And it's definitely light enough to just throw it back while you cut the grass or whatever. So I was not against it, but I'm not going to seek it out as opposed to any other just dry English style cider. Like that would be just as satisfying, if not more honest. Now I do want to point out, whoops. I want to throw this comment in from John. Beer logo looks kind of like the Wu-Tang logo. It really does have a little bit of a Wu-Tang
it's a little bit
kind of vibe to it. That's funny. If you really want to see that, look at the inverse of the Panda Express panda face. It's a little W and it looks like Wu-Tang. You're never going to be able to unsee it now that I've told you that. Real quick, I want to do something fun that we've been promising we would do, and we'll do it quick and dirty. Brian's always here when we talk about beer to give us a little rundown of his particular refreshments of the evening. Opioid painkillers tonight. Yeah, see, I'm going to chase this cider with some NyQuil because I follow the Dennis Leary theory of cold treatment. Big N, little Y, big fucking Q. And original like death flavor. That's where I'm at. So there's Brian's update. He's got opioid painkillers, which are going to mix well with the smoke of the evening Fruitopia. Light little buds, not very dusty. Nice skunky smell, thick indicia buzz. Sets in nicely and lingers. You know, he came in the wrong part of it. It sounded like a fart being described. Anyway, nice little strain. And thank you, Brian. We promise we're going to get you around to a segment one of these days. So anyway, David, I did you a little dirty. I rushed us out of the hot takes, and I robbed you of what we know you've also been waiting for.
Here we are.
Yeah, I didn't give you the chance for the.
Well, I got two.
Before we move on, you must be able to musk.
I mean, the first hot take is this. So it's looking more and more like Musk is not actually going to buy Twitter. And here's why. So Musk has financed this entire deal off his stock in Tesla. So that's his collateral. So whatever the value of the stock is for Tesla, that's what he owes as collateral when the trigger actually gets pulled on this. Well, the problem is that because of that, the value of his Tesla stock keeps dropping substantially. And on top of that, you have the Fed now raising interest rates. So he's got to present even more of now less value stock to buy Twitter. I don't think he actually, in truth, ever really intended for it to get this far. I think this is a comedy of errors. I think this is like Trump getting elected. He didn't actually expect to get elected. He, just thought he'd sell some ties or some steaks or something. I think Musk thought he would get some edgelord status, and the board would do what it was supposed to do, which was poison pill the whole thing, and everyone would walk away thoroughly angry, annoyed, and chafed. And instead, the board, I think in its own way, because you got to ask, why do you put a poison pill in and then say, no, we'll sell almost immediately after? I think what the board really was doing was calling his bluff.
I was about to ask you that. Yeah.
They were calling his bluff and saying, you know what? Let's go ahead and do this. Show up with $44 billion in 30 days. I need $44 billion in 30 days to buy us out and take us private. And the question is Musk going to embrace the pain to buy Twitter? Because he's going to keep on having to offer more and more and more of his Tesla stock every single day up to that 30 days.
I hope it fails. I hope it falls apart. I would definitely hiatus the platform on a long-term basis at the very least, just on principle, just as a sociopolitical statement. But I also don't really give a shit. Like if Twitter went away tomorrow, my life wouldn't be less complete. And, I don't care about it enough to quit it based on caring. I would just want to do the performance of giving the finger.
And I also do have one more quick hot take, because it came up in an Atlantic article and a bunch of people responded to it. And I've been on the other side of this issue before, and now having worked in the industry, I definitely see it a different way. I just want to take a quick conversation about tipping.
Oh yeah, you told me you had some tipping thoughts.
Yeah, so I mean, here's the deal. Like the Atlantic,
You confused me earlier because you were talking about edgelord and tipping, and I thought it was a dick joke. So I didn't. Yeah.
No.
Tipping.
Just a quick, there's been a lot of movements about we need to start paying a living or thriving wage to servers to end the practice of tipping. And now that I've been in the industry, I just, I don't necessarily know if that's the best deal. And here's why. If you're working that much harder, it makes sense that you get paid more. In its own way, ideally it ends up kind of like a profit sharing scenario, right?
Yeah.
And that's good. As I pointed out to several people, what I make with my tipped out work is significantly higher than I would normally expect my employer to be able to pay me per hour. Could they pay me more per hour? Yes. Should they pay me more per hour? Oh, fuck yes. But there is a degree of sense in keeping that tipped model. However, the argument that I would make is that we need to, if we want to actually reform tipping, we need to treat it like your car or a plumber or any other professional service, right? If you go to a restaurant, here's parts, right? Which is the food, and then labor. And that's what you owe. There is no further conversation of, oh, well, I mean, maybe I'll leave a 10% tip, or maybe I'll leave, I'll be nice and I'll leave a 30%. No, we need to take the guesswork out of it. We need to say, okay, now this is the breakdown. This is what your food cost, and then on top of that, these are the fees that you owe for the server. One of the big things I honestly believe that should be on there is a tip out for the kitchen, because they're normally the guys who get screwed the most when things are working hot and heavy. This is what you owe the bartender for making your drinks. And this is what you owe the support staff for managing the floor and cleaning your table and doing all the other things, changing the television for you, coming at your beck and call, being like, hey, how can I help you? Then that's how it should be.
I wonder if all these suggested tip spaces that are printed now on tickets could be utilized to kind of express that idea.
Well, I mean,
as a way to kind of progressively suggest it.
I mean, forget progressively. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Forget progressively suggest. This is what you owe. That would solve the problem.
Yeah, it would solve the problem if everybody did it. Otherwise, it would make people.
This is what you owe.
It would make shitheads avoid the restaurant that does.
These are parts. This is labor. Right. There we go. That's the cost of your meal.
Brian points out the best money he ever made was a singing waiter gig at the Stockyard in Nashville. Rest in peace, Stockyard. I don't even think the building is still there. Which was a classic old building. It really should be, but I don't know if it is. Olivia, personally, for me, the minimum wage is adequate if it ended ensures wait staff living wage when the tips don't meet minimum wage. And then now, I would assume you mean a better minimum wage than $7.25, something that's a real minimum wage. But that's a fair point. I don't really rate, I don't mind tipping. I raise eyebrows at all these fees. Like the other night, we ordered some Thai, and Grand Rapids is divided into quadrants. But if you think back to math, where 0 is the center, for no better way to describe it, the restaurant was at like the top right northeastern quadrant at about 3-3, if that gives you an idea, not far from the center. And this motherfucker took a route through all the other quadrants on the way here, which means that they were probably doubling up, tripling up. They were delivering multiple orders, possibly picking up and delivering multiple orders, which fine if the tech works it out. But where my suspicion looms large is that driver, by being that efficient, likely wasn't paid better by the network. The platform probably took the fucking bullshit fees and kept it. Even though they were more efficient, they should have been able to like lower the fee or take a cut of the fee. Like their action, I don't think would have had any bearing on the fact that we all pay ridiculous delivery fees to the companies, and they probably double dip, triple dip, quintuple dip when someone does that. So,
no. But I mean, I think we need to take the solution. I would argue to tipping is just put it on the bill, because here's the thing: we do that if there's a group of 8 or more present. Yeah. So,
and restaurants make that up as they go, right? Some people do 5, some people do 10.
Yeah,
there's no written rule.
Let's just do it all the time.
Yeah,
this is the tip out. And here's the thing: in my formula that I built out of my head, I'm like, all right, what would be a fair formula? All right, so if the server didn't have to tip out everyone, the fair formula would probably be about 15 to 18% to the server, and more if it's a larger party. 3% to the kitchen, a percent based on however many, if you ordered 5 alcoholic drinks, you should probably be paying, a percent based on each one of those drinks.
Yeah.
And here's a percent of your check to the support staff. There we go. And that's your total. And you can see it all itemized out.
Not a bad idea. Brian, if I had to pay shipping and handling on a piece of cheesecake, I'll lose my shit. Never get just one thing delivered with food delivery. It's almost always a terrible idea. Scott's tipping 20%. Good man. Well, let's jump into the most important elephant in the room, as a manner of speaking.
Here we go.
We're talking, of course, about the big news that landed late last night. I got to wake up to an angry text from David with this headline: "Here's the topic." And that would be the SCOTUS leak, which sounds dirty. Yeah, I mean, so for those that have somehow been under a rock today, an unprecedented, this has never happened, right? Never.
Not in the modern court, not in like 100 some odd years.
So in the era of mass media, this has not occurred. And what happened is that the first draft of a would-be opinion striking down Roe and the other one. What's the second one?
Planned Parenthood v.
Casey. Roe and Casey. And is it an opinion on the Mississippi case? That's the part I haven't.
Yeah, it's the Mississippi case.
So an opinion on the Mississippi case being used to strike down Roe and Casey. First draft, written in all of its snarky, gory detail by fucking Alito.
Oh, yeah.
And it escaped the bowels of the secretive court before it was settled. I mean, obviously, it would be expected to go through multiple drafts. This is a very interesting concept because it puts things in a very fascinating state of play, but it also calls straight out, black and white, exactly what the right wing is angling for. Yep. And it creates so many problems. It's well beyond get your hands off my uterus. That is one of the many issues that this comes out to be. We'll get to this. Everybody's got a theory. Brian's theory is Clarence Thomas. He wants to look like a hero to his new friends. And apparently, maybe the Roe decision was leaked. We'd have to look that up.
Yeah, I would have to look that up. I was not aware of that.
Take your word for it for now. Might as well. It'll be at least 5 times more true than anything Fox says if we just assume you're right.
Yep.
Oh, then he threw us an NPR link, so we're going to go with it.
There we go.
So, David, in all of your lawyerly rage, you've been, like I mentioned before, obsessively lawyer masturbating over reading this thing with anger.
All after noon.
Yeah.
All afternoon. All afternoon.
Yeah. And I kept several hours of news on until I just couldn't quite take it, and I decided that I was through being angry, so I went and watched the documentary about Boeing and their shitty 737 Max, which does nothing to not make you angry.
Yeah, right. Should do an entire episode on that shit. Anyway,
We might. Now that I've seen it, maybe
right?
we will.
So, you know, we all know what's happened. We have a vague idea. I'll go ahead and take this opportunity. Well, no. Yeah, I'll use this opportunity to go ahead and put my 2 cents in on who I think actually leaked it. Which is, I'm absolutely convinced that Roberts leaked this. I'm 100. I was 75%, and then I saw some quotes from Roberts. I'm like, nope, Roberts leaked it. This is not some weird activist clerk, because those don't really appear in. You don't get to be a clerk at the Supreme Court if you're an utter nutter. You can be a judge, but you can't be a clerk.
I would say, though, if you were a clerk and you read this and it just crossed the line so much, like if it were you,
No, but I mean,
as a clerk, I
that's
could
the
see
thing,
it.
though. I mean, that's the thing. If you're a clerk for the Supreme Court, they drill it into you. You work for that judge. You do whatever that judge says. Period. End of sentence. If the judge that you're working for says that you need to be there at 4 a.m. every single morning with a pink tutu on, you know what you fucking do? You show up every morning at 4 a.m. with a pink tutu on. That's how SCOTUS works.
What does a clerk get paid?
Almost nothing. I think they get a stipend. I think they get a housing allowance. You're not
so
actually.
it's an early prove yourself kind of job.
Yeah, it's definitely a prove yourself job. I mean, well, here's the thing: if you clerk at the Supreme Court, like the moment you leave, you're going to be pulling down 120 from a law firm, so you're fine.
It's classic dues paying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're probably in very close contention already the day you leave for a judgeship, for a federal judgeship. So
you think Roberts, which is interesting because it puts the potential, if we game that out, you're talking about the top guy.
Yeah, Chief
So
Justice
who comes
Roberts
for the top guy? Like Brian said, it could be career ending, but it's not illegal. It might not be career ending if you're the boss.
Yeah, I mean, here's why I think it was Roberts. Is because if you read the end of Alito's diatribe, I'm not going to call this a decision. It isn't a decision. It's a diatribe. If you read the end of it, then Alito directly addresses Roberts' primary concern, which is Roberts will vote with liberals. Roberts will vote with conservatives. All Robert cares about at the end of the day is preserving the integrity of the court in the face of the culture wars. That's it. That's it. Roberts will vote with Democrats. Roberts will vote with Republicans. He doesn't care. He just wants to make sure that the court remains seemingly above the fray. And
doesn't this kind of tarnish, cheapen, and lower the court
exactly
into the fray?
Well, leaking?
Yeah.
But the problem is, which is worse? From Robert's perspective, is if they strip a existing right from people today, people who have a right today, and then the next day they don't have that right. What many of them consider a fundamental human right, what many consider a fundamental civil right, it will trash the court. In other words, half the electorate will now look at the court not as some place to appeal to, but as simply as an enemy. Conservatives view the court as sometimes friend, sometimes foe, and something that they can use. It's simply a tool in their bag, and so therefore they're not usually, as long as the court doesn't do anything super radical, the court is acceptable and legitimate. The same thing applies to liberals. Sometimes it helps them, sometimes it doesn't. And as long as the court can navigate that neutrality, as far as Roberts is concerned, then they're good. And the problem with overturning Roe v. Wade is it violates that neutrality in the culture wars. And so as a consequence, I'm almost 100% convinced that Roberts leaked this.
Well, one thing's for sure. Mitch McConnell has definitely got the opinion that it must be figured out. He could not give fewer fucks about what this does to America and only wants to know who blew the whistle.
Right, because the thing is, now that the whistle is blown, here's what happens. Because I mean, and I told you this is what I figure happened inside chambers, which is Roberts said, let's modify the test in Casey. So for those of you who don't know the test in Casey, the test and plan that Planned Parenthood v. Casey lays out is basically it's a multi-pronged test, but in the end of the day, what it says is you can't outright ban abortion, and you can't put so many hurdles in place of abortion that it's functionally impossible to get, right? You can put 48-hour waiting periods. You can put, you have to go to, I don't know, a fucking, Lamaze class. It doesn't matter, right? But as long as the state
listen to the heartbeat bills that you
right, you have to listen to the heartbeat bills, all these other things. As long as the state doesn't fundamentally ban the right before the second trimester, you're okay. I mean, if a woman really wants it, they can have it. But the state can't put a hurdle that's impossible for people to get over. Or functionally impossible for most people to get over. That's what Casey essentially creates. You can put hurdles up, but they have to be jumpable. And I imagine what Roberts thought was okay, we'll overrule Casey, but we'll put in a new test that will allow states to add more hurdles or bigger hurdles, right? That will appease conservatives, but it won't outright ban abortion. And as long as we don't outright ban abortion, we're not going to get some sort of George Floyd level backlash. And because that's what he doesn't want. Because if he gets that backlash, then he knows that basically he's painted a target on the court. At that point, every Democrat that gets elected, their only job is to pack the court and invalidate the neutrality of the court. Because at that point, from their perspective, the neutrality of the court is gone.
Yeah.
So Roberts leaks this in the hopes that some of the not quite so nutty members, like Gorsuch, maybe looks at it and says, you know what? Okay, I'll sign on to your decision. And then he can turn around and look at the liberals and be like, listen, you're not going to win. But if you sign on to my decision, we can stop an outright overturn. And
what do you think would be upheld in the Mississippi case to reach those ends?
What?
The case that they would be issuing the opinion on
they're
to
reformat they're going to find basically they're going to find that Mississippi was right. I mean that's how you do that. You find that Mississippi was right, but the way in which they executed it was wrong.
Okay. And remind me which one that's the
Jackson Women's Health Clinic v. Mississippi.
What was the crux of that? It's not the nutty shit with Texas and the bounty of
no. It's a 15-week ban.
Yeah.
So I mean, I feel like that's where Roberts was. I feel like that because Roberts is the only one who wins from releasing this. Because if you're a liberal on the court and you release this, are you going to convince any conservative member on the court to not overturn Roe v. Wade? No. If you're a conservative member on the court and you just want to crow about it, was it fucking worth it to spawn this number of protests and this amount of anger that possibly creates even more headaches for you overturning Roe v. Wade? No. And now they know it's coming, right? That's even worse. Now they know it's coming. Now the barricades will be up on the street on the day of. So you don't win as a conservative. You don't win as a liberal. The only person who wins in this convo about who wins if it leaks and there's some modification is Roberts. And Roberts straight up said after this got leaked, well, yes, it is genuine, but this isn't the final opinion or decision of the court.
Right.
Roberts leaked it.
It's an interesting theory.
And I'll tell you, ironically, of course, who's in charge of investigating the leak?
Right. Yeah.
Roberts
and the what is it? The sergeant at arms or whatever.
Yeah, it's really Roberts.
Whatever they call that.
Yeah, Roberts would be like, yeah, I leaked it.
So you had a pretty good breakdown, and I want to make sure you have time to go through it. And plus, it saves me from using my overworked sinuses to form sound. I'm looking at your list. You got the state's compelling interest.
Yeah, I mean, these are the overarching themes. So, like, and I'll go ahead and break down the decision real fast. There's a number of overarching themes that Roberts comes back to. The main theme that he seems to really want to latch onto is
Alito, not Roberts, to make sure everybody's.
Oh, Alito. Sorry, I apologize. I was talking about Roberts. The main theme that Alito really wants to latch onto is getting rid of strict scrutiny. Now, for those of you who don't understand this concept, there's 3 levels of analysis that the Supreme Court uses whenever you bring a challenge to the court and say my constitutional rights have been violated. The first level is rational basis. If something doesn't look that nasty, and the example I give is this. Let's say you're a city, right? And you pass a rule, an ordinance in the city that says all city parks have to close by 5, right? Now, even though the people predominantly using city parks after 5 may be African American, since it's across the board, right, for everyone, bar none, then what you use is the first level of analysis called rational basis. Does the city have a rational basis for closing all the parks at 5? Well, the city says, well, we don't have staff. We don't have to really explain that far other than we want to close the parks at 5. Okay. And the court can say, all right, so the city has a rational reason for doing this. They're not applying it unequally in different places. They're not using some sort of different schedule in some places and another schedule in another. It's just across the board. City parks close at 5. Rational basis. Does the city have a rational reason for doing this? If yes, it passes. The next level of analysis is what's called intermediate scrutiny. Now, intermediate scrutiny says not only do you have to have a rational basis, but it has to be compelling. It has to be, you really need to be trying to do something with this, and you need to show why it's important. So that would come into play with if the city said, so all these parks in the black section of town are going to close at 5.
Yeah.
Right? So the city comes back and says, well, we have a lot of crime. There's been a lot of assaults, a lot of violence, a lot of drug dealing in these parks after 5. We understand that they are predominantly in black communities, but we have a compelling interest to protect the public from what's happening in these parks. And the Supreme Court would look at that and say, yeah, it is the black section of town. That doesn't look good, but you have a compelling interest. I want to clarify that case would not actually be ruled under an intermediate level of scrutiny, but I'm giving that as an example of how intermediate scrutiny could be used. Another example would be, I don't know, you have a bear park in the middle of your city and would rather menstruating women not be there. I mean, I'm trying to think of like something like that, like intermediate level scrutiny is actually kind of sometimes hard to find, but it does exist, and it's just does the government authority have a compelling reason to do what it's doing.
Nose break.
Oh, there we go. Strict scrutiny is the highest level of analysis. And strict scrutiny is not only is there a rational basis and it has to be compelling, but it also has to be the least restrictive means by which to achieve your goal. And this is where Roe v. Wade has lived, is in strict scrutiny. The state says it has a compelling interest in fetal development. I mean, this is one of the issues that I always have with this issue. Fetal development. I don't know. I mean, by no standard of medicine or law is this an actual person. But you know, okay. It that's what the state says its compelling interest is.
Would it be based on the idea that the would-be human is born, and if it survives the complete lack of interest in support systems from the right and becomes a tax-paying citizen, that is the compelling interest?
And Roberts actually references that.
Alito?
And I swear to God, I don't think his wife has ever known what an orgasm is by some of the shit.
Alito or Roberts?
Sorry, Alito. I keep on. I have Roberts on the brain. I apologize. Yeah, I don't think his wife has ever known what an orgasm is, but the level of misogyny he expresses in this. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. He talks about how women can vote and they can just drop the kid off. And if poor women get pregnant, then the state has to pay for it because they're too poor and they don't have or health insurance. I'm just like, holy shit, you man. I want you to live with a pregnant woman.
Are there no prisons?
Has your wife ever been pregnant?
And are there no workhouses or orphanages? This sounds like a familiar.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like Dickens. It sounds like something straight out of fucking Dickens, and it's so fucking bad. So intermediate or strict level scrutiny, it has to be the least restrictive means by which to achieve your stated compelling interest. And this is where Roe has lived, right? Roe has lived in this level of strict level scrutiny. And what Alito argues is that it's not subject to strict level scrutiny. And I also want to clarify, strict level scrutiny and women have a tenuous history. Racial minorities, immigrants, religious minorities, and after Obergefell, sexual minorities, all enjoy what's called protected class status, which means that they're historically discriminated against.
Yeah, that's always an elusive term for the average right-wing dickhole in any given social media network, because there's always some fucking Trump flag waving idiot that comes out and says, what about discrimination against white people? And you have to try in futility to explain to them what a protected class is.
So women have always existed on the periphery of protected class. They
Rob has cleared up Alito's sex life for everyone.
Yeah.
Alito would fuck the handmaid so his wife is not troubled with pregnancy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Those tiny fingers can really polish the insides of the shell casings. Are there no prisons, orphanages, or armories, Brian?
Wow. God damn.
It's so nice to know that we're not alone.
Poor people and women have always been on the periphery of this protected class status. Normally, they get knocked down into the pseudo intermediate level of scrutiny of, well, it's a compelling interest and it's women, so we'll do it. And that's one of the things that sets Roe apart. Is Roe says no, women in this instance are going to be a protected class. I also want to take one quick moment because a lot of people seem to be confused about some of the facts around Roe. And I want to clear this up for people. And I know I've cleared this up before, but it's really important to understand what Roe is, because this pisses me off. Roe doesn't legalize abortion outright, right? So the law that Texas had in place said you could have an abortion if you were raped, if there was incest, or if there was medical danger to the mother.
All of which they've sought to take away now.
Yeah, now you can't even get that motherfucker. And they learned their lesson. They learned their lesson from that law, which was, no, we're not even going to give that, because
they chose to be more Stone Age than they were when Roe went to court, which is astonishing.
And here's why. Because what Roe said was, so what happened when a woman would show up and say, I need an abortion, I was raped, they'd be like, well, you need to point out your rapist, and we need to have proof that he's a rapist. Well, that's going to take months. We're not going to be able to perform this abortion in time. Nope. Incest. Well, you need to point out the family member who had sex with you, and then we need to, again, try them and, have some evidence that incest occurred. And again, that'll take months. So nope. And then there was, obviously, you'd think a bunch of doctors would be like, oh, well, there's a medical need. She's in danger. It's an ectopic pregnancy or some other thing. We need to do this right away. Not in Texas. You would convene a medical board of inquiry at the earliest possible date, at which they would decide if it was, in fact, medically necessary. And by then, obviously, if it was an actual medical necessity, the woman would be dead. Oh, well, the father can marry again. I mean, that's where it was rolling. And so what Roe did and what Roe established was, here's the fun part, Dr. Aslick. You don't get to ask me who raped me. You don't get to ask me which family member put it in me. And I have obviously a medical decision from another doctor that says I have a medical necessity. It's a medical necessity that I have this abortion. You don't get to question that anymore. I have a right to privacy in my decisions. And Alito takes square aim at that. He has this. Let me pull this up. On page 45, Roe has conflated two very different meanings of the term: the right to shield information from disclosure and the right to make and implement important personal decisions without governmental interference. No, Alito, those are the same two fucking things, just worded differently. I have a right to privacy from the government interfering with me trying to find shit out. No, they are the same two things. And Alito tries to separate them and say, well, in Roe, because again, Roe was on its very surface was about the right to shield information.
And it moved over into due process, 14th Amendment due process as well.
Exactly, because, well, no, this Alito takes issue with at all. So I'll try and wrap this up with this Roe explanation, which is what Roe said was you can't enjoy these other rights that the Constitution provides unless you have a right to privacy. And what Roe establishes is this idea is what's called substantive due process, which is to say that there are rights which are not explicitly written down or mentioned in the Constitution, but which have to exist if you're going to enjoy any of these other rights. And one of them is the right to privacy. Huh?
That gets into the 9th Amendment.
Right. And then you get the 9th Amendment, which is, people have rights which are not expressly written into the Constitution, which, by the way, conservatives fucking hate. They will always jump to the 10th Amendment, which is all rights, all these rights are reserved to the states, or all these powers are reserved to the states. But they won't ever talk about the rights of people. So the 9th Amendment and the 14th Amendment combine to create substantive due process, right? Which is this idea. It's the same reason why they have to read you Miranda when you get arrested, right? You have even though the Constitution doesn't say you have a right to know that you can remain silent or that you are entitled to an attorney, you can't enjoy any of the other rights that you would normally have without substantive due process.
Right. Right.
And again,
Rob's throwing out the wonderful nickname Texas Taliban. Also, this is why I'm moving back to California. One of the many reasons.
yeah.
Uh,
I mean,
Brian points out the new Arkansas law waiting in the wings, and we'll talk about some of that waiting in the wings stuff. Makes no exceptino for rape or incest, and I know you didn't mean to, but I like no exceptino. I don't know if it's actually a word, but I
it is
dig
not.
it.
So I mean, this is where I mean, it's this idea that really bugs conservatives, is because Roe v. Wade did not expressly allow abortion, and what Roe v. Wade tried to do was they tried to build a framework to say, okay, now that we've said you can't ask this question, and this is where people get confused about Roe v. Wade, and I get it. Where they get confused later on, because I'm reading what Alito is writing, and I understand where in his very small brain he gets befuddled. Which is, then they go on and they build this schedule to say, okay, if you're within these time frames, this makes sense for you to have the opportunity to exercise your rights, right? But if you're within the first trimester, there's no question. If you're in the second trimester, we gotta ask some questions, because now you're just now showing up with the whole I'm pregnant and it was raping. I mean, and because he doesn't want to talk, he makes a very big point of not talking about the fact pattern from Roe v. Wade. So many conservative justices make a whole deal about using the name of the case and not mentioning what the fact pattern was, which is, why are we overturning this law? And this is why we're overturning this law. And this is how we're overturning the law. We're not overturning the law by legalizing abortion. We're overturning the law by saying you no longer have the right to ask.
And since they've achieved such a full plaid level of warp-powered fucking stupidity, especially in their base, but in the general populace, they don't. They know that no one even has an appetite for that level of thought
No, I
and
mean,
fact.
it's shocking and amazing. So, I mean, that's how we get to here. So, um, he makes this whole thing about trying to. I also want to point out. Well, no, I'll go ahead. So, day one of Roe v. Wade being overturned, here's what's happened: 26 states will immediately and fundamentally ban abortion in all forms. No exception for rape or incest in most of these. No exception
Which
for life of the
boggles
mother.
my mind. It boggles my mind. It's so Old Testament fucked up. Here, have your rape baby. Here, have your three-eyed, four-elbowed fucking cousin's fucking hellspawn. Like, it just...
Well, I mean, here, have your Harlequin baby. In which, if you want some nightmare fucking fuel, go look that shit up.
No thanks.
If you don't want to, if you don't want to sleep okay tonight, go look up Harlequin babies. It is a genetic defect which turns the skin into scales, and also causes the eyes to bug out of the head. They look like little fucking monsters, and of course, they don't survive very long. But Mama needed to have that baby, which I know I'm kind of dominating the conversation.
Oh
here.
my. I mean, it's
You
not Lemon Party or Goatsy, but it's right in the list.
Harlequin baby? You actually looked it up? Yeah, it's right there. I also want to take this opportunity to point out something else, because I mean, the justification I hear from so many people on the right is, well, it was God's will. Anyone who says that, I don't care who it is. I don't care how much, whatever else you do. I don't care how, like, if you served as a veteran and charged bullets, did all this stuff. You are a fucking coward. You're a coward because you want to blame God for a choice that you have made.
Yeah.
You made the choice. We have the medical technology, the medical ability to prevent this from happening, but you decided, no, it's God's will. It's not God's will. Well, they died in a car wreck. They died in a car wreck because they weren't paying attention. That wasn't God's will. They made a choice.
I need to remember to use that phrase on the general Christian population when bad shit happens and they say thoughts and prayers. I need to point out to them, why would you do that? It was God's will. Why
Right.
pray? It's God's will. What are you going to do? Thank him?
You're just a fucking coward who doesn't want to admit that you made a choice and don't want to admit to it. So when these things happen, like ectopic pregnancies, like non-viable pregnancies, there are so many instances of women who are in danger of dying from sepsis.
Yeah.
Because the child has died in utero, where they can't perform the operation to abort the dead kid in the body. And so she just has to die. And they're like, well, it's God's will. It is not God's will. I have the medical ability. I have the choice. I have the ability to remove the dead body from inside the woman.
Yeah. I mean, people wonder why I'm so fucking hostile about religion. It's this shit. It's this shit. It's this shit that makes me automatically cynical in the region I now live in. You know, the whole Dutch Reformed Church fucking. I threw the phrase out last week in the commission chamber, and I'm going to stick with it. The pearl clutch Reformed. That's exactly what the fuck it is.
It's insanity, and it's just cowardice. It's just cowardice. So I mean, day one, I'll tell you this: day one, the death rate for pregnant women is going to jump up significantly. Conservatives will try and hide it. They'll try and put it under a bunch of different other things. But at the end of the day, it will be the maternal viability rate in America over the next, I'd give it 6, 7 months, 8 months, will crash. Because all those women who should have received, I'm going to do this in air quotes, abortions, which aren't really abortions, they're just life-saving things, because pregnancy is rough on a woman's body. It is terrible on a woman's body. Right. And
well, at the end of the day, it's a fucking parasite. I mean, we try to make it out to be this, oh, everything is beautiful. Fuck that. It's a parasite.
It is. It is our reproductive process.
Scott's pointing out that a lot of reasonable religious people don't like that shit either, and he's absolutely right. The conservatives will just try to outlaw wire hangers.
Yeah. I mean, but it won't. And what I'm saying is, it won't just be from botched back alley abortions. It will it's from women who have curable medical conditions brought on by pregnancy, where the pregnancy needs to be terminated in order to save the woman's life. Showing up at hospitals. This has already happened in Texas. This already happens on a not irregular basis at many Catholic hospitals, where women will show up with ectopic pregnancies. Which, by the way, if you don't know what an ectopic pregnancy is, it's where the egg, instead of latching inside the uterus, has decided to hang out in the fallopian tube. Mm-hmm. By the way, it can't survive in the fallopian tube. By the way, if it continues to try and grow inside the fallopian tube, it just kills the mother. It's not a viable pregnancy.
God's will, David. Oh well.
Yeah, right.
Brian points out, will the harm that women are destined to suffer from this action make them change their voting habits? You know, I saw somebody make a snarky tweet earlier today that said, to think there are so many women who voted for the asshole just because they didn't like Hillary. And that is true. There are some reasonable, middle of the road, pro-choice suburban women that consider themselves maybe center left that didn't see the harm in Donald Trump. I found that probably worse than the people that are the jacked up tiny dick pickup truck with the Trump flag and the American flag on PVC pipes that they let get rained on and smogged on and don't give a flying fuck about the flag code, even though they think they're patriots. That set is not nearly as dangerous as the group of people who didn't see the harm in Donald Trump, because now is another example of the harm. January 6th was the harm. The African-American and immigrant experiences as minorities are the harm. And if you're so insulated that doesn't collectively harm you, that's horrible.
I'm going to come back real quick to that whole maternal death rate thing. Right now, amongst developed nations, we're tied with, I think, Brazil or Argentina for
really
the number of
fucked up
women
if
who
you
die in the course of pregnancy or childbirth in the United States.
wonder why.
The rest of Europe doesn't have this fucking problem.
Well, you know what I'm going to draw that back to, David? Pleasure fucking. It's that old problem I have with the fact that conservatives like to come out against pleasure fucking. Now, they
They
aren't
like
against
it, though.
pleasure fucking if it's them. Looking at you, Scott Desjardins. They're not worried about
Yep.
pleasure fucking when it's them, and they can apparently pleasure fuck any gender they want in whatever airport restroom they happen to occupy. However,
looking at you, Senator Craig.
when other people want to pleasure fuck, and if they're not white males, oh my God, no pleasure fucking for you.
No.
And that was one of my favorite, like, Lucas says shit that's completely offensive that falls out of his mouth in public moments was at the big Trump rally early on in Nashville, right after he was elected. There were a bunch of little white girl teenage dipshits standing around protesting with pro-life signs. There were a couple other liberal folks, and then there was this one guy from the state legislature that actually knew shit about laws, and he just kept hammering this bitch with stats. He's like,
Yeah.
"Did you know this? Did you know this?" He had stats like the one that you just mentioned about the mortality rate, and I just stepped in the middle of the circle and said, hold on, guys. I got one question. I looked at this fucking 16-year-old dumb twat, and I said, what is you people's problem with pleasure fucking exactly? And they looked so shocked. I think partly because I just blew the whistle on all the shit that they were doing under the bleachers at their high school that week. But still, like, for me, it always comes down to this double standard, fucking prudish. I mean, our culture deals with sexuality horrifically bad across the board. But the right has absolutely no fucking clue. And it's evident when they start this kind of shit. I mean, it's clear as day that they are stuck in a Puritan, laid down, don't enjoy it. Handmaid's Tale. We keep coming back to the Handmaid's Tale motif. You're not supposed to be able to have choice, agency, enjoyment, and adventure, and you certainly should have consequences. Unless, of course, you're part of the ruling class, and then we'll make a special club for the commanders, and they can go have all the hoes they want and all the drinks. So I always end up finding that it boils down to that kind of inequity, and we see it all the fucking time. And it's that stuff when people say, well, there's not really that big of a difference between Democrats and Republicans. It's this shit. This is the shit. This is the stuff that really pisses me off when people don't realize these are the differences. Yeah, there are differences. There are a lot of differences. You don't have to love the policies. And to all my younger, extreme left fucking wokeism warriors, yeah, great. That'd be nice. Have your utopia one day. But right now, could we just block this kind of fucking shit? This is more important. This is more important than your fucking pronouns. I'm sorry.
I mean, they're both valid, but
this is a major problem for anybody ever. This is why when I started seeing the pregnant man emoji, I was like, "Oh, for fuck's sake, we got Roe in jeopardy, and you want to have a fucking emoji?" And then I get told that I'm some kind of asshole. No, I just have priorities. Incrementalism sometimes is the only goddamn line of defense, and you motherfuckers have learned it today.
Speaking of incrementalism, as we get incrementally more drunk.
Well, I have to be done because my next shot is NyQuil. So,
all right. Well, I will go ahead and trigger the. Wherever it is.
That's right. It's time.
I've lost it. I can't find it. Where is it? There it is.
I got you, boo. I'm for another round.
Well, simply because I paid way too much for this alcohol, and
This one is a humdinger. I'm
I
glad you're
paid.
alone on this second break because this one deserves all of its own attention. It really does.
Yeah, it's so. This is Garagist Meadery Evil Mjord, and it is made from Turkish pomegranates and American blackberries.
From the juice of over 1,000 pounds of Turkish pomegranates. And what I want to know is, was that before extraction or just fucking pomegranates? Because I'm picturing if it's extracted little seed podlets with all the juice, that's a hell of a lot of those.
I'm gonna tell you, it's very pomegranate. It is absolutely delicious. And I'm gonna say this, even though I paid a lot for it, because it's got so much berry to it, and it's got a little bit of a cough syrupiness to it. It's not as thin as I would have liked. I think it's very obvious that they've used a wild yeast here, which isn't uncommon for meads. Like, it's definitely got a honey finish. It's got a very nice smooth honey finish, and it's got this really strong tart front. But I mean, this is definitely. I mean, it's a mead.
You have definitely piqued Olivia's interest. She's definitely a mead fan.
Yeah, Olivia, if you want to get your husband something like really out of the box mead wise, find Evil Mjord, and it's Turkish mead. Also, I highly recommend a variety of South African meads, which are also very good.
Brian, this one is out of Tampa, so we're getting down into the Florida territory,
right? Which I really don't get, but fucking A. But I mean, it's got a really nice. It's super juicy. It's got it. For me, mead normally isn't tart. Mead normally is sweet all the way through, and this is it's unique in that it's got a very tart front end, which I like. I mean, I like that sour flavor a little bit at the beginning, but this is definitely. Yeah, this is danger fuel. I will say this because I mean it's 13%, but it's mead, which got me really excited.
Yeah,
because
I've never been able to get on the mead train entirely. Like, I can try mead and appreciate it, but it's never been a big thing. Olivia has one recommendation for anyone that's watching. So
you see, and everyone needs to know Dance Mjord is. I'm not trying to be down on you, Olivia. That's definitely like your basic intro to mead. I will say there are a lot of people these days. Like, I know here in Nashville, there are a couple of quote unquote meaderies, and you'll go and you'll find their cans and stuff in places, and I'm just like, oh, pudding, okay. And they'll add a little bit of carbonation or stuff too, and you're just like, no. This is not proper mead.
it is harder to find up in Vermont, apparently. So,
oh, really? You can. It's like a weed in the South.
Not as burnout friendly.
Yeah, it's like a weed in the South. You can there's every liquor store has some Dansk Mjord if you know what to ask for, in that little. I think yeah. Hold on, 1 second.
I think he's got a can, or a bottle, or a label.
I have my doorstop right here.
Of
this used to be Dansk Mjord ginger mead.
That is quite a hefty bottle.
Yeah, they always do stoneware, which I guess is how they justify the price. Falls, fails, and clumps someone.
Brian's not really a mediator, a mediatist. Yeah, I acknowledge the existence and that people enjoy it, and I respect it, and that's the extent for me. I don't say that they make cans out of any knowledge. No,
Dansk Mjord doesn't. Local Nashville meaderies have taken to canning their mead which I don't think helps it a lot. I think glass probably is the preferred medium to let it rest in.
Medium. We're just loaded with mead jokes. Well,
Uh,
with that, let's get back into your SCOTUS thing and send it home. We want to try not to run too late tonight for folks, because this is the one big academic topic. But
yeah.
let me point out, earlier there was a comment from Rob about Oklahoma. Oklahoma's right on top of it with some follow up to the Texas law.
Yeah.
So, and here's what I wanted to ask you, David. Before I get into my other questions, which are petty ways to strike back.
Yeah.
Don't we get into some hairy space when we have all these states randy to make laws that punish people for interactivity with other states? Like, doesn't the Texas law basically have the ability to technically come after anyone nationwide who helps fund someone's abortion road trip?
And that's a big issue. That is a huge issue.
Because
So-
I mean, basically,
Because what you run
can't they
into
just
is
legally
they're trying
piss
to
up a rope and
criminalize.
get bent? I mean,
Yeah, what they're trying to do is they're trying to introduce what's normally a civil aspect into a criminal aspect. So, and this is kind of proof that they are in fact criminalizing the act, which Texas has been trying to say, oh no, we didn't criminalize it. It's still a civil matter, but no, you've criminalized it, and here's why. In law, and I'm going to mispronounce this intentionally because the way you're supposed to pronounce it in law is wrong. It is fucking wrong, and you should not pronounce French this way. I'm going to pronounce it renvoi. If you ask a lawyer, they'll be like, "You mean renvoi?" And I will explain that if my Creole grandmother ever heard me use that word intentionally, you could power the state of Tennessee by the rate at which she would spin in her grave. You just mispronounced French. The only thing you could never do at grandma's table was mispronounce French. So renvoi is this idea that who has deciding jurisdiction over an act. If I have a car that's, this is where this most often takes place. I'm driving a car from Tennessee in Michigan, and I get into an accident with someone from Wisconsin. Whose law governs the case? Does Michigan law govern because it happened in Michigan? Does Tennessee law govern because I'm in Tennessee and I bring the suit? Does Wisconsin law govern because the defendant is in Wisconsin? Whose law about how fault is determined is it has to control the case? And this actually happens quite a bit, right? State courts regularly will ask another jurisdiction, how would you rule on this case? Well, like what laws are controlling on this case? And in many cases, state courts will sit like it's not uncommon for a state court in Michigan to sit and decide a case based on Tennessee or Wisconsin law, right? Not Michigan law, but Tennessee or Wisconsin law. So what they're doing is they're weaponizing this tool that exists inside the American legal framework to try and make it so that their law is always controlling in this instance. The problem is it? And the answer would generally be no. But because Texas and all these other states have assigned personhood to a clump of cells before it's even done anything, before it's viable or anything else, I'll get into that little whole fuck nugget later from Alito's decision, his diatribe. They've injected themselves into this universal jurisdiction on a matter, and that can't happen. That doesn't work. I mean, that's the death of federalism, right? You're no longer a citizen of Texas. You're a serf of Texas, right?
So they're basically saying, "I dare you." They're basically going full Texas and saying, "I'm going to stick it to the libs. I dare you to take us on."
Well, and Missouri has tried the same thing, and the Missouri courts are at least, despite the fact that, ironically, the Missouri courts are just as conservative as the Texas courts, even they are a little bit like, man, I don't know about this shit. Because Kansas City is a can of worms, and I don't want to go crack that open since it straddles two state borders.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So even the the Missouri court system has been very suspect of, I don't know if I can do this because this is going to create a big problem later on. Like, I can buy beer. Like, do I prosecute someone for buying beer an hour later on the Kansas side? Right? I mean, how far does my jurisdiction allow?
Right.
Right? If I, sell legal weed on the Missouri side, can the Kansas side now arrest the person who sold the weed on the Missouri side for selling it to a Kansas resident?
Brian has a pretty legit question here. That I actually don't know that one off the top of my head, but
yes, it does.
So other nations are expected to uphold.
U.S. courts have had to, in the past, depending on the circumstance, apply British law because it doesn't normally apply across legal systems, which there are two predominant legal systems in the world. Three, well, with the rise of China, really three legal systems. But there are two there are two major legal systems, which is one is called Salic and the other is called common law. Common law is,
and the China one is called "fuck you."
Yeah, the China one is called "fuck you." There isn't really a system of law there, but Salic law is a whole lot different than how we would conduct ourselves. Common law is we all have a common pool of cases that we draw precedents from, and we have rules about how we treat those cases, which is one of the big things about overturning Roe v. Wade, which is what's called stare decisis, which is it must Latin, it must stand, right? Because unless you have an overwhelming reason to rule a different way, however the court ruled the last time, they have to rule again. That's a guiding principle of common law nations,
which is apparently meaningless to these fucking assholes.
No, he goes into a whole thing about why he's violating, and because you can overturn stare decisis in certain circumstances, and he goes into the entire test of how he's able to justify violating stare decisis, which again, half of it is bullshit. And I'll tell you why he feels like he can violate stare decisis, because I made a special note about it. Did I make a special note about it? Yeah. So Casey is his big problem. So again, I talked to you about those hurdles earlier that Casey sets up.
Right.
So his argument is that Casey is too vague, and therefore it becomes unworkable to enforce the rules from Casey and if you can't enforce those rules from Casey, then stare decisis no longer applies.
What could be so difficult?
I'll tell you what's difficult. You have to actually look at the facts of the case, which is what he doesn't want to do. He doesn't want to look at the facts of the case. He just wants to know that women don't want to have the rapist's baby, and that offends him.
God's will, right? Okay. Yeah. It's the old battle between conservatism and facts. They just don't get along.
It's not pretty. It's not pretty, boys and girls. Because I mean, and we haven't touched on this. It is the hypocrisy of we care about children, but we won't feed them. Because he actually goes into this at one point, and I mentioned this earlier. Of we don't need abortion because poor women can get their pregnancy covered by Medicaid, and there's health insurance, and some states have maternity leave, but not all of them. But that doesn't matter. The fact that some have maternity leave is what's really important. And you can just drop your baby off, no questions asked, in some states.
Well, that was Barrett's big defense when she was getting grilled in her hearing. She said that she leaned on those factors as mitigating factors in the abortion scenario. That
Yeah, I mean,
so he's just lifting.
Insanity.
He's
It's
actually
absolute
playing
fucking
to her.
insanity. But yeah,
Yeah, I don't give a shit about that, because I can tell you right now, I've got an adopted cousin. It barely fucking happened to, an aunt and uncle who are some of the most level people you could ever examine. It's insanely difficult. It's fucking bullshit. It shouldn't be that hard to give a loving home to a child, but it is. And so the idea that adoption is easy is fucking garbage.
Well, no, the idea is that women can give up their child if they don't want them.
Well, okay.
They just have to go through 9 months of physical hell.
Are there no orphanages?
Yeah, basically. So that's and women can vote. That was another one of his points.
Right.
Women can vote. I mean, it's absolute insanity, and the hypocrisy is this. I have said multiple times, and I will say it again on this program. Verbally, I've written it down multiple times. Sure, I'll join you in banning abortion the moment you provide free health care to every woman, every child for the remainder of their life, maternal leave, paternal leave, free child care, guaranteed housing and employment, all the things that someone needs to raise a child. You want to guarantee those things. Oh, and contraceptives, free contraceptives, no questions asked to anyone who wants them.
Sex ed, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, and mandatory sex ed. If you want to give those things, you know what? I'll join you, because at that point, the need for abortion should be minimal, right? It should be only in the case of medical emergency and critical fetal defect.
And I would still hold on to the incest and rape babies.
Well, in incest and rape, obviously, those as well. Sorry, I apologize. No,
but these Stone Age motherfuckers have no interest in any of not only those things, but none of those mercies.
If you wanted to provide those, then I could be down. I could be down with this. I could, but you don't want to provide them, and so therefore, since you won't provide them, then abortion is a necessity of reproductive rights.
It's the classic conundrum with these assholes. They are not pro-life, they are pro-birth.
They're not even pro-birth, because women keep on dying giving birth, and the baby dies too. They literally, it's just this whole fucking God's will bullshit, and it drives me nuts. And the other thing that I want to point out, because I'm going to move down my bullet points finally. His overarching,
but real quick, Olivia's comment unfolds into one thing that we really haven't touched on, which is the economic deficit. Really, at the end of the day, well, her comment here speaks to how this is really about power and subjugation, which is one of the three pillars of conservatism, in my opinion: greed, power, subjugation. And this hits two of those pillars. Yeah. Really, it hits three of them if you think about the fact that there needs to be a slave labor market for these assholes.
Yeah, and I also want to point this up. Point this up. Anti-choice. It is not about being pro-life. They are not pro-life. They have never been pro-life. They are not pro-life or anything. What like one of my arguments right now, and I apologize if I sound religiously bigoted. I honestly do. Um, I say this as an Episcopalian, which we are very close brethren with the Roman Catholic Church. But holy shit, when you condemn abortion but not capital punishment,
Yeah.
no. Oh, we're going to deny communion over contraception and abortion, but not those Catholic legislators who support capital punishment. Then you have failed in your Christian mission. You have failed, literally, according to the Gospels, you have failed. Because, by the way, abortion and birth control and all the rest are not mentioned in the Gospels, but capital punishment is. Curiouser and curiouser.
Yeah. Scott now has a new epiphany into you, David. Episcopalian explains a lot. Brian gives you a good solid amen. So continue down your list, sir. We're closing in.
So going down my list of things that we need to talk about. So we also need to talk about the broader legal consequences of what's happened. I want, because he brought it up, I just want to quickly rewind. Abortion is talked about in the Old Testament. It is allowed under Mosaic law. This is one of the things that really blows my mind about, we're full Bible Christians. The law of Moses allows abortion. In fact, it encourages it if the life of the mother or the situation in the community does not support the addition of a new member.
Yeah, that's if you want to go old school, let's go.
Let's go. This is
community not supporting the addition of a new member is a great description for the long list of shit that Olivia put in her comment.
Yeah, I mean, this is the law of Moses. I mean, you can't tell me if you want to believe everything literally, the wandering for 40 years in the desert, that they were not aborting children. Right? You want to tell me that no grandmother was sitting there mixing the tea, being like, no child, no, we can't have that now.
Right?
We don't have enough food and we don't have enough water, so you're gonna drink this. You and your husband can have another kid later.
Yeah.
So I also will say this: Martin Sheen is an excellent example of an excellent Catholic. I mean, he's President Bartlett.
Jeez, here we go again.
Right? Why can we like Martin Sheen?
So you were about to get into the aftermath, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the broader legal context of what Alito is proposing is this, because the overarching theme of his thing is, again, I talked about strict scrutiny earlier, which is basically do away with strict scrutiny. All a government needs is compelling interest, or to argue compelling interest. They don't have to argue. I mean, if it impacts someone worse than the other, well, so be it. So what happens is Oberfell, Brown v. Board, Griswold, all these major cases. And for those of you who don't know, Oberfell is the case that grants gays and lesbians the right to marry.
Yeah, I was about to ask you to break those down.
Yeah, that you can toss that right out, because we no longer have to have strict scrutiny. Brown v. Board is what ended segregation.
Right.
Yeah, we can toss that out. Griswold v. Connecticut, which seems to actually be included in this in a dark way. Griswold v. Connecticut grants access to contraceptives. under the same right of privacy. I want to point that out. So, and I'm going to walk you through the fact pattern of Griswold real quick because it's important to understand how it links to Roe v. Wade. Griswold v. Connecticut. In Connecticut and many states at the time, you could get contraceptives. You could, as long as you had your husband's permission. Right? If you didn't have your husband's permission, then no, you couldn't buy contraceptives because you're a loose floozy, and we don't want you, again, as Lucas has pointed out, pleasure fucking. So Griswold v. Connecticut said that you don't get to ask that question anymore. You don't get to ask women, do you have your husband's permission? Again, and you see how it links into Roe v. Wade, right?
None of your business. That's the answer.
None of your business. And this is where Alito really doesn't seem to get the idea, and he takes one version of privacy and tries to split it into two things to satisfy his needs. One is the right to withhold information, and the other is the right to not have government interference in a private act. And here's the problem. We there's another big case that actually very explicitly links to this, and that's Lawrence et al. V. Texas. Lawrence et al. V. Texas. In Texas, it was illegal to have anal sex between two men.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I knew it sounded familiar.
Yeah, Lawrence et al. V. Texas. It was illegal for two men to have anal sex. And two men.
When was that?
That was true.
It's old, right?
The late 90s. It was the late 90s.
Yeah.
It's not that old.
Well, that's old by a lot of people's standards. I mean, we got to.
So,
two men. Not as old as Roe, but
two men made a point of calling the cops and saying, "By the way, I'm about to fuck my partner in the ass."
I love
a violation of Texas statute. And proceeded to still be in the act of copulating when the cops showed up.
Sweet.
Just so they dared them that they were actually fucking each other in the ass.
Nice.
And of course, the court came back and said, "Listen, Texas doesn't get to." And I mean, if you want to, the granddaddy of the Oberfeld decision is the Lawrence et al. V. Texas.
Because that's essentially bedroom privacy.
Right.
That's the reason everything else is okay. That's the reason that you can put on your fucking gimp mask. That's the reason you can have your whips. That's the reason you can tie people up. That's the reason you can get your puppy tail butt plugs. Like, the law can't fuck with your bedroom hobbies is rooted in that, right?
Yeah. Lawrence et al. V. Texas.
Once again, all these kinky, gay as fuck Republicans that want stuff for themselves but don't want anyone else to do it.
Damn straight. Looking at you, Graham.
You think he's got like a Trump T-shaped butt plug? I think so. It's not even rounded. It's a big old serifed T. Just a big old fucking
I think he wears
hammerhead
outfit,
fucking.
Honestly, I mean, if I had to pick something that Graham would wear, I'm like, a Sailor Moon outfit really is the first thing that jumps to mind.
Oh my. I think you did that because you know that from my convention life, I know full well what a hairy little man looks like in a Sailor Moon costume.
Yep.
There's one at every Comic-Con.
I parked the car there for a reason.
Oh, I hate you. Yeah, it's the reason that Madison Cawthorn can wear lingerie and get groped by his assistant that he's totally not fucking.
It's not like he would feel it.
Oh, God damn. Whew. You know, I used to think it wasn't okay to make fun of people in wheelchairs, and then Abbott and Cawthorn
Madison Cawthorn appeared.
You know, equal rights, baby. You have an ADA government guarantee that you can equally be pounded in humor by me or your assistant.
Yeah. I mean, No, I'm going to stop the line of inquiry right there. I'm just
Yeah,
gonna...
Back to the legal fallout.
We're going to be done right there. But anyway,
because I got to get to my petty bite backs before we close.
No, but so Lawrence et al. v. Texas says that it's privacy, right? And again, I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to be rather animated at this point.
Uh-oh.
Roe v. Wade did not allow abortion. It allowed privacy. Griswold v. Connecticut allowed privacy. Lawrence et al. v. Texas, which is decided in large part, this like the line of cases that comes out of Roe v. Wade about the establishment of privacy is huge. So, and I want to point out that literally in his decision, Alito references the act of privacy and then promptly hits the gas as hard as he can to get right past the fact that all these other cases hang off of the right to privacy, and he wants to gut that right to privacy.
Yeah.
So what's the judicial fallout? Well, apparently states can pass laws that say, you know what, we get to search your home to find out if you have inappropriate sex toys.
Ooh, T-shaped butt plugs.
Yeah, like T-shaped butt plugs. We get to search your home to find out, we've decided that while gay couple, that not only cannot gay couples marry, but again, we're going to go right back to you have no right to privacy, so you can't fuck your gay partner.
Wouldn't it fuck with probable cause to some extent? Like, wouldn't it be legit? Like, if I lived in Tennessee,
Oberfell has been the law of the land for 10 years. If there's two gay men who are married, you'd imagine that the cost would be like, well, there's probable cause that you all are fucking each other. And
no, I mean, in a broader general sense, if you can just start poking around people's shit, doesn't that fuck with search and seizure and probable cause?
Does it stop the police today?
Barely, but like,
yeah.
Let's take, for instance, if you are like me and for a really solid fact that more than one deep pothead in Tennessee, you could just go on the presumption and just go be nosy and open up their drawers and oop, there's your illegal weed.
Hi, Lucas. I have bad news for you. They do that already.
Yeah, they do, but this seems like it would make it easier, like way easier.
Exactly.
So it's kind of a red carpet to all kinds of abuses. Yeah. Yeah.
Bingo.
What other fallout you got? I want to get petty. And Brian's all here for it. He says, ooh, pettiness.
Yeah. So anything sexual, that's right out the fucking window. Oh, by the way, HIPAA no longer applies. So yeah, your health insurance company, you no longer have an expectation of privacy in your health. So,
that's okay, David. The right wing doesn't know what HIPAA applies to anyway.
No, they don't.
Because if you were told at a Home Depot to put your fucking mask on, they would say, HIPAA, you fucking retard. That's not what that does.
Yeah, no, it isn't. So yeah, your entire medical history can be traded about. That's gone. I mean, anything that you would normally consider private, is right out the fucking window because you no longer have an expectation of privacy,
right,
on anything except within your house. Like what we're doing right now. Like if I have a webcam right here, right? Without it is possible and logical without Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court could argue that if someone hacked into my webcam and I tried to sue them and say, you should not have hacked into my webcam, it's a violation of my privacy. The Supreme Court could say, well, you don't actually have a right to privacy because it's not in the Constitution.
Yeah.
Or the government, or the government could hack into my webcam and violate my privacy.
Or any number of things. I mean,
why did you hack into my webcam? For what reason did you hack into my webcam?
That rabbit hole runs deep.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's massive. So Oberfell, Brown v. Board, all of it, and I want to come back to why Brown v. Board. Well, because we we've already eliminated the strict scrutiny, right? So we no longer really have protected classes under Alito. Which is, again, I'm going to come back to something to the very beginning. This is why I think Roberts has tried to kibosh this. This is why, because if I'm Roberts and I'm granted, me and Roberts don't agree, but he's not an absolute fucking human tainted human sphincter. He has his own ideas about where government should intervene in law and how that works. He was not a big supporter of the Heller decision. He was not a big supporter of a lot of hardcore rightist decisions. I have to imagine that Roberts looks at this decision and says, this destroys so many fundamental rights that it will annihilate the validity of the court. Because people will simply look at it and say, the Supreme Court took my rights and flushed them because they wanted to ban abortion.
Pretty much.
So I'm going to move on real fast to my next little bit. Who's going to be actually we've already talked about who's going to be most impacted by this decision.
Yeah.
Poor women and women who have medical necessities, women who have medical preconditions. Now, I once dated a girl and we talked about this fact, which is she could not. We had to be extra careful because she could not get pregnant, because if she got pregnant with her medical with her medical conditions, it would be very life-threatening. Right? It would be very life-threatening for her to get pregnant. But that's over. We're back to it's God's will.
Right. Very knuckle dragging
because
Neanderthal shit.
What Alito has created is the state's compelling interest overrides any other thought of life.
Right.
No other life applies. We don't have to consider it. They've argued a compelling interest, and now we can just kill people through sex. It'll be fun, really.
Right. Well, David, I don't fathom that tomorrow Uncle Joe's going to wake up and pull the shoebox out from under his bed that he put his nuts in 30 years ago and suddenly balls up and pack the court. And I know that probably couldn't happen fast enough.
After this, he might actually find his nuts.
But it can't happen quick enough, right? Like there's no packing of court that could happen before the court could just turn around and say, "Ooh, here, we've got a decision." Right?
Oh, for this? No. That's well, no, we could do that. They could do that.
You think so?
Sure.
You think if he actually decided to find his big daddy uncle nuts and like tomorrow said, "You know what? I have 2 to 4 nominees. Here they are. There's no short list. These are the people. Their hearing starts tomorrow."
Yeah, he could do that.
And then the hearing lasts, 2 days? And then Senate votes.
Well, no, the hearing will last at least a couple of weeks, but it'll be long enough to pack the court.
I mean, I'm all in at this point. Pack it, do whatever. I want California to create a gun law that's identical to Texas's abortion law that lets me get a $10,000 bounty on any motherfucker that does anything wrong with a gun from now until the end of time.
I want to answer this real fast. This whole, child support will bring the conservatives back into line. What's our enforcement level on child support?
I was about to say, what all the deadbeats that don't pay it now are going to all of a sudden care?
Yeah. No. I'll tell you what happens.
I mean, that's a turnip that doesn't bleed already. I'm not saying it's a stupid idea. I just think it. She says it wasn't serious.
I'm just saying, because that actually has been proposed as a serious sort of thing by some people. I'm going to point out
I heard something about the rapist can be charged with child support. What?
Yeah. If you're in Grundy County, Tennessee.
Oh God.
Right. Grundy County, Tennessee, which is an actual yeah. Right.
Grundy County's already there. Let's just go ahead and dress the part.
Yeah. We're already there. If you're in Grundy County, Tennessee, the likelihood that the sheriff is actually going to pick you up, on child support charges, especially when you're probably his second cousin,
yeah.
Even though you knocked up his other second cousin
and father-in-law,
yeah, and possibly father-in-law, and I mean,
anyway, the only petty comebacks I can come up with right this moment are, aside from women nationwide throwing an absolute shit fit in the streets, which they should definitely be doing.
That's what needs to happen right now. I mean, like literally right now, what needs to happen is absolutely.
You thought Black Lives Matter was unruly? No. Wait till the pussy hats decide to stop being nice. And if you haven't learned the woman scorned thing by now, what the fuck?
Yeah, burn. Hey, listen, sister, burn that shit the fuck to the ground.
Yeah. Petty similar laws about guns or packing the court right immediately tomorrow now are the only two things I can come up with as a way to strike back. And I'm sure there's more, but that's where I'm at.
I mean, and I just want to kind of, as we close this up, I just want to point out the level of just, I mean, I have all these notes on this, and the level of stupidity. I mean, like, he actually, because he didn't want to be accused of the ostrich rule, which is in law, the ostrich rule is you don't actually talk about contravening authority, right? You need to talk about people who said different, but then you need to talk about why they're wrong. In this case, he literally basically just lays out, well, they're wrong because I don't like them. I mean, and then he moves right the fuck on. One of the best bits, though, that was just absolutely shocking, was the court in Roe went through this whole gyration about viability, right? According to Alito, viability means nothing. Conception begins at birth. All abortion is illegal. Viability means nothing. And he doesn't explain why at all. Why is viability? Well, because I don't understand. I mean, basically, he says I don't understand viability, and therefore it doesn't apply.
Right.
And it's just that whole section. I'm at a loss for words. I don't have words that will express my anger, disappointment, frustration, shock.
Yeah,
this man is a Supreme Court justice, and
I mean, look at the
basic
appointment.
Evidence doesn't matter because I don't like it.
He was appointed by W. I mean, what else do you need to know? We do have to get wrapped up shortly. I like Brian's closing statement. I'm pro-choice until the 48th trimester. There we go. I would point out that we will be signing off so that we can go watch the playoffs in the NHL, where our Preds have
didn't earn it.
Preds have managed, like a couple minutes into the first period, to already be losing down by 2 to the Avalanche. But nonetheless, go Preds.
Go Preds. But you know what? No, I'm going to say go Preds, but we didn't earn it this year.
I can't stay awake for this whole game.
We didn't earn it. We didn't earn it. I would have preferred that we not make it into the playoffs and that we rebuild and understand that we need to rebuild because we didn't make it into the playoffs.
You know what? I'll take it. Whatever works. Hopefully things will get lucky. What can we say? Let's see. We got go Preds, go Canes, traitor. And
fuck
Brian,
you, fuck you hard.
Aloha, Brian. So
bye,
that
Brian.
is it. Thanks, folks, for tuning in. As always, feel free to subscribe, like, share, etc. Tell 3 of your favorite friends about us.
Yeah, please do.
pitch it as a couple of lovable assholes who've exposed the nature of their relationship to the world, because that's basically what we did. We just decided to put what we already were doing in our spare time on a screen in front of you. So,
because it's fun.
With that, folks, I'm Lucas. This is David, and we will tell you, as we always do, good night,
good evening,
and
good
luck.
luck.